This is week 2 of a series we're calling XOXO. And we're learning that our greatest need is not romance. Our greatest need is redemption. And so we're seeing a story of redemption, but we're kind of getting some truths about romance and relationships kind of peppered through the book of Ruth. 4 chapters long, 84 verses. It's a small book, but we've got a lot to unpack and learn as we go. And maybe you guys have seen this if you're here with us in person. You've seen these conversation hearts kind of scattered all across the campus. We've got them on all the high top tables, in the social side, all around. There's all kinds of different sayings. Hug me, kiss me, be careful with that one. Love you, be mine. All kinds of different things. I actually did a little bit of research about this because these I can just remember these, growing up. I found out that the first conversation hearts were printed back in 1866, so 154 years these things have been around. They've ramped up in the amount that they produce. They now make 8 billion conversation hearts a year at a production rate of 100,000 pounds every day. 100,000 pounds of conversation hearts. And I found out that it takes them about 11 months to produce what they will sell in the 6 weeks leading up to Valentine's Day. That's a lot of conversation hearts, right? So we have these all around campus. And the goal is not just to have a tasty little snack all around, but the bigger goal is to cue us to have a visual that we want to create. Awaken exists to create a place where we have life-giving conversations. Because God forbid that we just keep our conversations around Valentine's Day when it's on a heart, but we want this place to always be a place where we can have real, raw, life-giving conversations that change us from the inside out. Because it turns out that conversations, dialogue, is really important to our growth. In fact, along this line, conversation, dialogue, it's a big part of the book of Ruth. I mentioned that it has 84 verses. 59 of the 84 verses of Ruth are dialogue-driven, contain dialogue. So dialogue is a big tactic, a unique part that the author of the book of Ruth uses to move the book forward. Dialogue, having conversations, it's how we grow in relationship with one another, and it's how we grow in our relationship with God. And so just from the start, I want to state that Awaken is a place where we are real and raw and honest. And we talk about what is actually going on in our culture, in our lives. This is not a place where you fake it till you make it. Is anybody with me on that? This is not a place where you need to come in and pretend like everything's okay. We want to, when somebody asks you, listen, here's how this works at Awaken. When somebody asks you, hey, how's it going? Give them an honest answer. Now, I'm not saying we walk around in a pity party all the time. There's a million things going on that we could be sad about at any point. I'm not saying that we just walk around sad all the time, but I am saying we walk around honest all the time. And when somebody asks you how things are going, if things are not going great, would you tell them, hey, you know what? Actually, it's kind of not great. Would you mind praying for me about this thing? Come on. We need our conversations to be more than just in a box sometime around Valentine's Day. We need to create a culture where we're talking about the real, raw things of life. If you were here in week 1 of this series, we covered some pretty heavy, hard-hitting topics. Loss, tragedy, death, compromise. I mean, we just right out the gate hit those things from Ruth chapter 1. And just to backtrack, for those of you who maybe missed week 1, Elimelech and his family, his wife Naomi and their 2 sons, were living in the promised land, Bethlehem in Judah, and a famine hit. And so within 5 verses, this family went from a happy family to a famine. They moved to Moab, and they went to 3 funerals. Elimelech died, Naomi's husband, and both of their sons died. And over the span of 10 years, one of our main characters, Naomi, went from a married mother of 2 to a childless widow, bottom rung of society. Deep, deep, tragic loss. Again, I just want to state from the start, Awaken is not a place where we pretend like everything's okay in your life. We do not shy away from the hard topics. We don't dance around things that make us uncomfortable, especially if the Bible talks about them. We're just thinking it probably got included on purpose, and we're going to talk about it. You with me on that? So we need more honesty in our lives. We need more conversations to happen. And so today, we get to this place where Naomi has been living in compromise for more than 10 years. And she decides she needs to do something about it. So I want to pose a question to you today. We need to all answer this for ourselves. What do we do when we find ourselves in a place we know we shouldn't be? We need to ask ourselves this question today. And I'm going to really, the whole message today is a call to action for all of us. It's a call to action to take a step. And I want to encourage you today with the title of the message. The title of the message is, It's Time for a Comeback. It's time for us to leave the area of compromise, the area that we've been living in for too long. It's time for us to step into what God has in store for us. It turns out that the setback is a set up for a comeback. And God's ready if you're ready to take a step. Ruth chapter 1. We're just focusing on 4 verses today, verses 6 through 9. I'm reading from the English Standard Version. Verses will be on your screen, but as always, I encourage you to bring a Bible or look on with someone. Ruth chapter 1, verse 6 says, She arose, speaking of Naomi, with her daughters-in-law, to return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she set out from the place where she was with her 2 daughters-in-law, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. And the Lord grant that you find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. And then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. Let's talk today I want to give you 3 thoughts today about what do you do when you find yourself in a place where you know you shouldn't be. We need to personalize this today, and like I said, the whole message really is a call to action for all of us. Number 1, let's start here. I hope you're going to take some notes. These will encourage you. Number 1, would you write this down? No one can take a step of faith for you. It's your move. No one can walk by faith for us. It's up to us. And this works spiritually, but it also works physically. Wouldn't it be nice in our technological age if we had figured out a way for somebody else to go to the gym in our place and we reap the benefits for it? Come on, sign me up, right? Somebody's like, say it again. That would be, I don't know. I don't care how much I got to pay for that. If we figure that out, we'll work it into our budget where I could sleep in and maybe eat Oreos while I'm sleeping while somebody else goes to the gym and I reap the benefits. If we could figure out a way to do that, I'm in. Well, it turns out it doesn't work that way. Turns out if you need some muscles, if you want to get fit, if you want to get healthy, you're going to have to put the work in. And this is what prevents a lot of people from doing it because it's a personal decision. There has to come a place where you're tired of where you are and you're willing to make some changes. Now, that's how it works physically, but that's also how it works spiritually. It's not about you being around enough spiritually healthy people that will eventually make you spiritually healthy. Yeah, certainly that can lead you to it, but that doesn't do it by itself. You growing up in a godly home, that's a great thing, but you have to make a faith decision for yourself. Amen. You have to decide. You have to take a step. This is what Naomi started to do in the beginning of our reading today. I love that these 2 words define Naomi's step. Verse 6, it said 2 words. She arose to return. Arose, return. She got to a place where she was tired of where she was, and she decided, I have to get to where I know I need to be. She found herself in a place where she knew she didn't belong, and she arose to return. She arose to return. Those 2 words, man, that there's so much power in that. She had spent 10 years outside of God's promise, outside of God's protection. And listen, we all fall. The Bible says all of us sin. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We all fall. Even as followers of Jesus, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to cross lines. We're going to compromise. This is unfortunately part of living the human existence. We're not proud of it, but we accept the reality that there will be times where we backtrack, where we've crossed some lines, where we fall. And that's spiritually and physically. You guys know how it is. Have you guys ever done the thing, like when you're walking and you trip on the concrete or something, and you just garage sale, like you're just out all over you drop all your stuff, and then you get up and you just like hop up and wonder if anybody saw you. Have you ever done that thing? It's a little embarrassing, right? You just like hope nobody saw you. Sometimes though you're on it's glorious to be on the other side of that when somebody else falls, and you just like stand there and clap for them, like, wow, that was so graceful, you know? No, what's funny about this is that, like, falling, unfortunately, is just kind of like a part of life. It's going to happen for some more than others if you have the clumsy gene, okay? Some are just going to fall a little bit more than others. But listen, when we fall physically, what do? We jump right back up. And sometimes we limp a little bit. Sometimes I got to get a cast on my ankle because I just broke it, you know, whatever it might be. But we don't just stay on the ground. We get up. Now, just think about this. Why do we do that physically, but we don't do this spiritually? Can you imagine if we did physically what we do spiritually? Let me illustrate. Imagine if we fell down physically, and then we just accepted this as our new reality. Well, I fell. So I guess this is just where I'm going to be. This is unfortunate, especially since I'm in a crosswalk in a road. It's just too bad that I fell and I'm not able to get up, and I guess this is who I am. I guess I'm just a fallen person now. Can you imagine? Like, that doesn't even make any sense physically. Why we don't do that. When we fall physically, what do? We get back up. Why would we not do the same thing spiritually? When you fall, not if, when you fall, what do? Arise. Get up. We're going to fall. We're going to fail. You're not going to accept your fallen position as your new identity. No, you're just going to say, I made a mistake. I fell down. I'm getting back up, and I'm going to where I need to be. Amen. Right? Come on. Amen. Christina's with me. And I'm not going to stay on the ground. That is not who I am. Sure, I fell. Of course you failed. We're going to do that at some point. But failure is not who you are. That's something you did. Don't accept that as your new identity. Come on, get up. It's time. We want to be defined by these same words that Naomi was defined by. Arise and return. And can I remind you that Naomi, at this point, when she found herself in Moab, after 10 years of running outside of God's promise and protection, she didn't anymore have her husband to pull her up and help her along. She didn't have her sons to say, Mom, come on, we gotta go. She had to make a decision to get up and to go to where she needs to be. She did it. Her legacy was defined by those two words, arise and return. Will they define you, or will your failure define the legacy you leave? It's really your move. Now, let's talk a little bit deeper about this, because when she heard where God was moving, she knew she needed to do everything she could to get there. Here's a second thought. Would you write this down if you're taking notes? Stop at nothing to be where God is moving. She got some news, Naomi did. It says in verse 6 that she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. Not in Moab, but back where she came from, in Judah, in Bethlehem. So there she was in the fields of Moab, and she got news that a long way away, back where she's from in the land of Judah, that God was listening to the prayers of his people and providing, taking care of their needs. You know, Moab was a long distance from Bethlehem where she was getting this news from. But word spread far. Why? Because the work of God doesn't need a marketing campaign. The work of God in our lives is contagious. God doesn't need a marketing director. He doesn't need a billboard. Did you know that on the Super Bowl, a 30-second commercial cost $5.6 million? So for an advertiser to get 30 seconds of our attention, they paid $5.6 million to air that 30-second ad on TV. Everywhere you turn, there's brands and there's names and there's things trying to get you to buy their thing or do this or be this. God doesn't need a TV commercial, a radio ad, a billboard, because the work of God in our lives is contagious. Speaking of 1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 8, Paul mentions to the Thessalonians, he tells them the work that God is doing in your life. He said the word of God has sounded forth from your life. He went on to talk about how, like, when we get to the next city after Thessalonica, we don't even have to do a lot of explaining about the gospel, because the story of what God is doing in your life beat us to the next city, because the work of God is contagious. And here's why. Because the church has what the world wants and can't get without Jesus. The church has love, real, genuine love that the world is trying to get through human relationships, through bouncing in and out of different dating apps, up and down in boyfriend and girlfriend, and all of this stuff. We're looking for it, but the church has it. We have it in Jesus. Right? The world wants peace. The church has experienced true peace, where we can lay our head on our pillow at night, know that it is well with my soul. It may not be well with a lot of the things on the outside, but God's got me, right? Where we have peace. We have joy. Where all of it, see, this is what's different between joy and happiness. Happiness tends to be based on what is happening in our lives. So when things are not happening like we want them to, we're not happy anymore. But I have joy that the devil can't touch, because his name's Jesus and you can't take him away from me. So when everything else falls apart in my life, I've still got joy deep down inside, right? The world wants it. The church has it. It's contagious. The move of God, the work of God, it's contagious. And so she decided to do something about it. Verse 7, I love this. Watch this. It says, so she set out. This is a decisive, determined decision, action on her part. That she didn't want to just hear about what God is doing, but she decided to set out and be a part of it. She didn't want to just listen anymore. I don't know about you, but I'm just tired of listening to what cool stories about somewhere else. I want to be in it. I want to be a part of the move of God. I want to do whatever it takes. I want to shed whatever I need to shed. I want to step wherever I need to step to get to the place where God is moving. Now, in this story, that was a physical location. For most of us, it won't be necessarily a physical move, although that may be the case for some. But we're talking a spiritual move. You're going to need to take a step away from something, away from someone, to get to a place where God is moving. And I don't know about you, but I hope that you are, I hope you're driven to do whatever it takes to not just hear it anymore, but to experience it. Because some of you have grown up, like you've been around this a lot. You've heard stories of restored marriages. You've heard stories of God healing lives. You've heard stories of God breaking addiction and overpowering depression and all of these things, but you've listened to it for far too long. I'm telling you, today is your day for a comeback. I'm tired of just listening to it. I want to be there, right? So this is a decision that she made. She set out. She goes, I got to get to where God is moving. I'm not going to just stay here anymore. And by the way, speaking of being where God is moving, welcome to church, everybody. God's doing some powerful things in and among us. 2020 is our year. 2020 is a year of, I believe God's going to do the miraculous in us and through us like we've never experienced. It's already been powerful as we move forward, looking into renovation and making more room for more people and preaching the gospel. We're praying for more gospel preaching opportunities this year and more faith decisions in 2020 than ever before. Beautiful on the mountain are the feet of those who bring the good news. Publish the news of peace, Isaiah 52:7. We're praying that God would use us in that way. And so welcome to the move of God. But listen, you can come and sit in a chair and hear all about what God is doing around you, but not actually participate. Today is the day that I'm inviting you, and God is inviting you in to his story to be a part of it, not just hear about it, not just be around it, but actually be in it. Because I don't care what the news outlets are saying. It turns out that Jesus and his church are alive and well today. God is still moving and working. Jesus said he was going to build the church, and hell itself couldn't take it down. Come on, church. We're alive and well with Jesus on our side. Amen? And so God's working in our midst, and we got to do whatever we can to contribute to it, be a part of it, be right in the middle of it. Naomi heard, but she didn't want to just hear. She wanted to participate. Here's my reminder to you. Some of you have been in Moab long enough. You've been in the place of compromise long enough. You've heard stories about what God is doing in other people's lives long enough. Today is your day to take a step and experience it yourself. I'm inviting you into that today. At the end of this message, I'm going to challenge you to take that step. Put your faith in Jesus. Come home if you've been away. Right? Do whatever you have to do. Stop at nothing to be where God is moving. So Naomi sets out. It says that her daughters-in-law go with her, Orpah and Ruth. We'll hear more about Ruth, especially in the coming chapters. She's obviously the main character. Naomi sets out. It's obviously a lot easier when somebody goes with you, but let me ask you a question. When you find yourself in a place where you're not supposed to be, and you're tired of it, and you decide to step into where you need to be, what happens if nobody goes with you? Will you still step? Number 3, here's a thought for you. Would you jot this down? Determine to follow God even if you follow alone. Even if you go alone, even if nobody else goes with you, be determined to follow God anyway. Because listen, you follow God for you. Your decision to follow God by faith is not a decision I can make for you, your parents can make for you, your friends can make for you. It's you and Jesus. You have to make a decision to follow Jesus for yourself. Orpah and Ruth here, they started the journey with Naomi, but there are multiple times, we've read one already today, there will be more in the coming verses. There are multiple times where Naomi tells them, hey, it makes more sense for you to stay back in Moab. You don't need to come with me. She tells them multiple times, stay back. We're going to revisit her prayer of blessing that she prays here in just a moment. She tells them, like, you guys are young, your families are still alive in Moab, this is all you've known. She goes, you guys can remarry in Moab. She goes through all of this stuff, and it's not that Naomi doesn't want them to go, because actually it was far more advantageous for Naomi if she had somebody to go with her. But what this tells me, when she over and over tells them, hey, you guys don't have to go with me. Here's what this tells me over and over. She did not make this decision for them. She made it for herself. And I think there's somebody here today who needs to do the same thing, who needs to say, man, I've been praying for my husband to come to faith for so long, and I've been waiting for him, but I'm not going to wait for him to make a move. I'm going to make the move. For some of you, you're praying for your spouse. You're praying for your boyfriend or girlfriend or your friend, and you're like, I'll do it when they do it. No, listen, it's not about them. It's never been about them. Your faith decision is about your faith decision. I can't make a decision for my kids. My kids can't make a decision for me. Your friends can't make a decision for you. It's you and Jesus. That's it. Determine to follow God even if you follow alone. At the end of this message, I'm going to say, hey, if there's anybody here who needs to come home today, this is your moment for a comeback. Would you lift up your hand? I'm telling you, right? I'm giving you a warning right now. I'm going to give you that opportunity. And some of you are going to hesitate because you're scared that maybe you'll be the only hand that raises. Who cares is what I'm trying to say. Go. Follow God. If you're in Moab, let's go to where God is going, where he's working. Do whatever you got to do to be where God is moving, determined to go, even if you follow alone. It was easier, of course, if somebody went with Naomi, but she was willing to go alone. She was willing to take the step. And maybe that's a word for a spouse who's been waiting, a friend who's been waiting for the stars to align, for everything to work out. Don't wait any longer. Today's your invitation. Now, one thing that's unique about this book, it's primarily the bigger story here is a story of redemption. You're going to see this play out, especially in the coming weeks, even more. It's really a story of redemption, but all throughout the story of redemption, it's kind of peppered with relationship and romance. Couple falling in love, marriage, all of this stuff along the way. And so I want to just take a moment and revisit, just for some quick relationship wisdom, the prayer that Naomi prayed over her daughters-in-law in verse 9. She mentioned in verse 9, she's praying over them, the Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. She's saying, you guys stay in Moab, you can remarry, and I'm praying that your marriage is a place of rest. Now, let's just real quick talk about this. There's a lot of wisdom in this. First of all, marriage is for most people, not for everyone. I want to highlight that being single is a gift from the Lord, okay? So don't despise that. Our greatest need is not a relationship with another human. Our greatest need is a relationship with Jesus. So there are some who God gives the gift of singleness to. Now, if you're worried that you have the gift, you probably don't have the gift, okay? If you have a desire to get married, that's most likely a God-given desire, and hopefully he's got somebody out there for you, okay? So just hold on. Don't lower the bar. Keep the bar high, all right? Have you figured out that sometimes we lower the bar in a relationship? Like when you start out, you're 13 and you got like 7 pages of what you need in your future husband, right? By 18, you're like, I think I could do away with like the last 3 pages. Let's just stay with the first 4. By 25, you're like, this first page is looking really good. If they could just measure up to right here. By 35, you're like, is he alive? Perfect. That's dating material right there. Don't lower the bar. Keep it high, okay? Keep the bar high. Here's some wisdom for you. Watch this. Naomi says, I pray that you'll find rest in the house of your husband. Why is that? Why is that so important? Because I believe right there in that one sentence defines so much of God's plan for marriage. That a godly marriage would be a place of rest and protection and blessing. Men of the house, let me speak to you for a moment. If your marriage is not a place of rest and protection and blessing, of course it takes 2 to tango, but listen, the weight is primarily on the man's shoulders. If your wife doesn't feel rest and protection and blessing in the household you're building, something needs to change, and the change doesn't start with her. The change starts with you and how you're leading your home. Wives, same story for you, your part. Are you helping create a home, a marriage, a family that is a place of rest and protection and blessing? This is, I believe, God's wisdom for his design for marriage. This is what he wants. Now, let me also give you some dating wisdom here. Let me tell you this. If you are dating someone right now and your dating relationship is not a relationship of rest and protection and blessing, don't waste your time putting a ring on that finger. I'm warning you. If it's not a relationship of rest and protection and blessing, come on, married folks can back me up on this. Marriage does not fix the flaws, it accentuates the flaws. So if you think that, well, he's not what I want necessarily right now, but if we get married, hopefully that'll change, you are flawed in your thinking. Get out of that relationship now before you lock yourself into a relationship that will lead to heartache down the road. A godly marriage is designed to be a place of rest and protection and blessing. For some of you, boyfriend and girlfriend, the Moab that you're living in right now may be your relationship. And I know that's not like a happy Valentine's Day quote. But listen, the only way to receive blessing in our lives is when we take a step of obedience and faith. And that may mean saying no to a relationship that you've known for a long time that is not healthy. Do all you got to do to get to where God is on the move, and do it even if you go alone. Right? We've talked a lot about being on a journey. There's a lot of motion so far. And I want to call out two people in the room, two groups of people in the room today. The Naomis and the Ruths. Let me explain. The Naomis in the room. These are the people who are living in compromise, but honestly, you're a foreigner in that land. This is not where you've grown up. This is not where you belong. And you realize that you've walked away. You've crossed lines. You've compromised. And you're in Moab, but you know where you need to be. Today is your invitation to go home. It's time for the comeback. It's time for you to take a step and be where God has actually called you to be. Stop giving in to the compromise and the cultural system around you. Do you notice what I love about Naomi is that she ran for over 10 years? And even though she ran for over a decade and she lost everything, she knew when it came time, she could go home at any moment. Can I tell you, no matter how long you've run, Naomi, you can go home today. Today is the day for a comeback. I got 3 words for all the Naomis in the house. It's your move. It's your decision. What are you going to do? This is your invitation. Let me talk to the Ruths for a moment. The Ruths are those of you who, you didn't necessarily grow up in church or religion, or maybe you did, but you've just never really surrendered to any of that. Today I'm telling you that God is at work if you'll take a step and believe him. The Ruths are those who need to make a decision for the very first time to say, I'm ready to get out of my life of compromise. I'm ready to make a change. I'm ready to take that step of faith and put my faith in Jesus Christ. I'll give you the same 3 words. It's your move. I can't force you to do it. Nobody around you can force you to do it. It's up to you. Are you going to take seriously the work of God that he's trying to do in your life and move toward it today? The invitation is in front of you. And if you've been waiting for the right time for everything to line up, today's the day. I'm here to tell you. The right time to do the right thing is right now. It's time for a comeback.